The sky was overcast, with dark clouds continuously rolling and pouring down corrosive acid rain. Tree branches swayed wildly in the gusting wind, and the sky occasionally flashed brilliantly. The animals of this world were peculiar. Mice with disproportionately large heads and tiny bodies, sparrows larger than eagles, a world ravaged by disaster. In this harsh reality, securing a meal was a daunting task. The protagonist, Sawyer, lay motionless in the underbrush, waiting for a sparrow for what felt like ages. Opposite him was a rudimentary trap made from a pot. It seemed his luck was poor today. After lying in wait all day, he hadn't spotted a single bird. Muttering to himself about the dire situation, he worried that he and his companion Atticus might starve. "We'll eat, we must," he reassured himself. Finally, his patience paid off as a sparrow, eyes red and as large as an eagle's, flew in, also hunting for prey. Suddenly, it dived towards Sawyer, who had been spotted despite his stillness. Startled by the aggressive bird, he quickly dodged to the side, but the sparrow missed and landed near his weapon, the pot. Before he could steady himself, the sparrow attacked again. This time, Sawyer didn't dodge. Instead, he struck hard with the pot. The sparrow was knocked back by the blow. Not giving it a chance to recover, Sawyer rushed forward, grabbed the bird by the neck, and slammed it to the ground. With a swift twist, he broke its neck. His movements were fluid, a testament to skills not acquired overnight. Relieved, he hoisted the sparrow over his shoulder, contemplating his next moves, when suddenly a buzzing filled his head, a sign of the mysterious affliction that had plagued him since his narrow escape from a wolf pack. The villagers claimed it was a residual effect of that encounter. However, Sawyer knew it was more than mere headaches. It felt like falling into a chaotic abyss. After a while, he found himself surprisingly lucid during an episode, standing in a strange space bathed in a dazzling light. A palace appeared before him. Curious, he approached and pushed open the grand doors, only to find the vast interior empty, except for a table in the center with an indistinct object upon it. As he moved to examine it, a sharp pain shot through his head, pulling him back to reality, where the rain had intensified. Just then, a bald man spied on him from behind a tree. When Sawyer prepared to leave, the man attacked with a blade. With a disdainful glance and a fluid motion, Sawyer swung his frying pan, hitting the attacker hard enough to send teeth flying, leaving the man questioning his life choices. Sawyer then sprinted away, ignoring the bald man who sat nursing his bruised face. Suddenly, a screen appeared before Sawyer with a mission: gift the prey to another. Puzzled but intrigued, he looked back at the bald man, now weeping helplessly. Approaching coldly, Sawyer asked, "Do you really want this sparrow?" Confused but hopeful, the man nodded. Sawyer handed over the sparrow, which made the bald man ecstatic. A new screen popped up, showing that the mission was complete and his reward was a basic skills chart that could allow him to learn others' abilities. As the grateful man hugged the sparrow, thanking Sawyer, he suddenly snatched the bird back, saying coldly, "You want it, but you can't have it," and walked away, leaving the stunned man behind. As the rain cleared and the towering fortress loomed ahead, Sawyer, carrying the frying pan and the sparrow, headed back. Below the post-nuclear wasteland skies, laden with acid rain, remnants of human civilization clung desperately to survival amidst ruins and mutated animals. Wild wolves howled in the wilderness, while the rich in their minds celebrated night after night. Outside the walls, refugees suffered from hunger and cold. Our protagonist Sawyer was born among these refugees. He had a brother in arms, not by blood but closer than many, named Atticus. Like other common folk, they lived in a settlement beneath the towering barricades. The settlement was dotted with thatch-roofed houses, and the high walls always stood out starkly. Sometimes, Sawyer would gaze at the fortress, lost in thought, wondering about the world beyond. As dusk settled over the sky, Sawyer reflected on the settlement's daily rhythm. By day, the people from within the walls maintained order. By night, they retreated, leaving the slum to its own chaotic devices. Night in the poor district was dangerous, lawless, a place where the strong preyed on the weak, and idlers often resorted to violence and theft. At that moment, Sawyer, carrying a sparrow, walked down the street. immediately drawing the attention of a group of thugs. Most people here were mere laborers for those inside the walls, trading hard labor for food. Few dared to hunt in the wilderness like Sawyer, making his catch all the more valuable. Choosing to make a living in the wilderness was Sawyer's way of claiming a piece of freedom for himself, despite the dangers and potentially lesser rewards compared to laboring for the wealthy. By the roadside, a group of people whispered among themselves, one thug leaning over to whisper in a bald man's ear, "Looks like he's caught something again." It seemed they were inciting the bald man to rob Sawyer of his catch. Seeing their secretive behavior, Sawyer tensed and gripped the bone knife at his waist. Just as the thug was about to make a move, the bald man patted his shoulder and said, "Forget it, don't mess with him, he's crazy. Remember, the only thing more dangerous than a man with a weapon is a madman." Afterward, Sawyer arrived at a general store where hunters could sell their game to the shopkeeper, who would then resell it to the fortress. After some haggling, Sawyer sold his catch and bought a cotton coat for Atticus. He then looked at the medicines behind the counter to treat his wounds, but decided against buying any after hearing the prices, thinking it better to let the wounds heal naturally. Upon returning home, he found Atticus, who was doing his homework and was visibly thrilled to see Sawyer. "Did you catch a sparrow, brother?" Sawyer sat beside him, asking about his homework. Atticus replied, "It's going all right," his interest in studies evidently waning as he looked up eagerly at Sawyer. "When can I go hunting with you?" But Sawyer, not wanting his brother to endure the hardships and dangers of hunting, insisted that gaining knowledge was most crucial. No matter the chaos of the town, no one dared to trouble the schoolteacher, but the tuition was far too expensive for most. "I'd love to learn myself," Sawyer said as he prepared the remaining innards of the sparrow for Atticus, his makeshift brother. Atticus noticed the wound on Sawyer's arm, expressing concern, but Sawyer dismissed it as a minor injury. After cooking the innards, Atticus refused to eat, insisting that Sawyer needed the nourishment to heal. Tears streamed down his face as he protested, "You're not just anyone, Sawyer." "People have died from infections," Sawyer snapped, placing the plate on the table. "Look around us. If you don't eat and someone bursts in at night, how will you defend yourself? I sent you to school because you have a special ability. You need to learn well so you don't end up scavenging in the wilderness like me." Atticus remained silent, finally sitting down and tearfully eating. Realizing his words might have been harsh, Sawyer gently touched Atticus's head, comforting him. "Eat up and try on the new coat I bought you." Atticus looked up at Sawyer, who smiled back and reassured him, "Don't worry about me, I'm not cold." Later, Sawyer lay in bed, reflecting on the day. Soon, he drifted into his own dream world where the palace reappeared. This time, he walked directly to a table which now held a piece of paper listing completed tasks and rewards, and an old printer with keys marked with core values. "Is this suggesting I should be the good person?" he mused internally. The experience reinforced to Sawyer that being a good person in this society was akin to suicide. Meanwhile, a woman approached Sawyer's house. As she lifted the curtain to enter, she was startled by a bone knife pressed to her neck. The knife was held by a young-looking Atticus, his actions and expression far beyond his years, a testament to the harsh environment's impact. Recognizing the visitor as Scarlett, Atticus slowly lowered the knife. Scarlett sighed in relief, understanding the necessity of such caution in these perilous nights. Atticus eyed Scarlett coldly and asked what she wanted, clearly not having a good impression of her. Scarlett, however, was very friendly and, lowering her head in a warm manner, said, "I heard your brother Sawyer got hurt." "It's just a scratch from a sparrow," Atticus replied coldly, while Scarlett looked worriedly at Sawyer lying on the bed, hesitating as if she wanted to say more, but eventually just quietly watched over him. It was clear she cared about them, but at that moment, she didn't know how to express her feelings. Leaning on the table, Atticus stared at Scarlett and said, "Scarlett, you're 8 years older than my brother. You don't need to fuss over him so much." Hearing this, Scarlett's face turned red, and she quickly explained, "Don't be ridiculous. I see you both as younger brothers." And then, trembling slightly, she leaned against the wall for a moment before whispering, "Never mind, I should go now." "Tell him I came by," Scarlett said as she turned to leave. Watching her walk away, Atticus stood up and continued his watch at the door. While sitting and daydreaming, he heard his brother's voice, "Don't always be hard on Scarlett. She has it tough too." Atticus immediately objected. "She's unclean. I've seen her smoking cigarettes, which only come from the fortress factories. I bet she got them from some shady man. She's probably only approaching you because you managed to hunt." Sawyer replied solemnly, "Who do you think is clean? No one can stay clean if they want to survive these times. Just keep your distance and don't trouble her." Hearing his brother's words, Atticus seemed to understand and nodded. "I understand." Sawyer then came over and sat beside Atticus. The two sat at the door watching the moon, and everything seemed so beautiful at that moment. Sawyer, looking up at the sky, murmured, "I might also have some kind of power, but I'm not sure what it is yet. I need to test it." Lost in thought, Sawyer recalled his past skepticism of such things until one day when he was hunting with Atticus, who merely made a wish and a bird fell right in front of them. "Brother, look at the shooting star." Atticus pointed at the sky as the meteor streaked past. Sawyer cautioned, "Don't make a wish. What if it backfires?" Atticus replied, "I know, brother. But why do shooting stars fly so fast? What if everyone doesn't have time to make a wish?" Sawyer humorously explained, "They fly fast because they don't want to hear your wishes." The next day, as Atticus went to school, Sawyer left too, but not to attend class inside. Instead, he listened from outside the classroom window, eagerly absorbing every word. The teacher, a kind man, had already noticed him, and after school suggested Sawyer could listen from the door. Gratefully, Sawyer bowed to the teacher, a gesture of deep respect, and then looked up smiling. "Thank you, teacher."